Thank you for taking a few minutes to join me for a review of the powerful analytical insights provided by T-Pulse. After logging in and navigating to the dashboard, you are given the option to select the interval you would like to view the data. You can select between custom, monthly, and yearly intervals. Next, you have the option to determine the date range you would like to analyze. You can choose a single date or a range of dates. This selection can span days, weeks, months, or years. Finally, you also have the option to choose All Dates from the drop-down to include all the observations currently in your database. And remember to select Apply to confirm your selections. To complete setting up the data you would like to analyze, you can select the units of interest. If your operation contains multiple units, you can check all of the units available, or you can select any specific units of interest. Again, remember to select Apply to finalize your selections. Now that you have made all of your selections, the relevant insights are now updated. First are the number of open and closed observations for the selected dates and units. Next, you can view the number of high-risk observations that have been observed across these dates and units. Then there is the category that is most often repeated across the dates and units, followed by the observation that is trending on the platform. The line chart at the bottom left shows the number of observations that have occurred across the dates and units. This chart is very beneficial in that it represents the safety performance across your selections. In the middle at the top, you can choose to view all the observations for your selections, the open observations or the close observations. Below that, you can see how each unit compares against other units in your operation. Clicking on the Expand button will expand and collapse the selection, revealing a more detailed look at the unit comparisons. Moving down to the risk-wise comparison allows you to analyze the risk scores for the observations. Again, clicking on the Expand button here too will allow you to expand and collapse this information. The bar chart below this allows you to review the observations by risk category that occurred on a given date. Lastly, the risk categories on the far right side of the dashboard reveals the number of observations that have occurred in each risk category. From here you can do several things. First, you can see the number of open and closed observations related to each category. Second, by clicking on a given category, you can view all the observations specifically related to that category for the dates and units selected. Last, by selecting Custom, I can specify a different date range to review to gain more meaningful insight. Finally, if you want to review a specific observation, you will need to know the observation number. Armed with this number, you can type it in this space. You will then be prompted with all the observations that contain variations of this number. For example, if you type in 79, you will be prompted with 179, or perhaps 1079, or even 1790, if any of those observations exist in the dashboard. Now select the desired observation and you will be immediately transferred to that observation on the Observations tab. Finally, before leaving the home screen, by clicking on the Analytics tab located next to the Home tab, you will be presented with an abundance of analysis that have been prepared by the platform analyzing data from the most recent observations captured by the platform. Once on the Analytics page, you are introduced to Zones. Zones are the areas covered by the individual CCTV cameras located within the units that have been set up for monitoring. You can see these units and zones by selecting the drop-down arrow at the right. Next to this selection is the interval selection. This allows you to select what range you want to view. For example, you may want to view the current date, the previous 7 days, or the previous year. Once you make your selection, the data will update to match your selection. An important point to note is, the data is originally presented with the critical observations and the grouping toggles selected. To view all of the data ungrouped, you will need to unselect these toggles. Once your selections are made, the data will update and the analytics will be presented. This section shows a Pareto chart of the data for the units and zones. Included also is the most dominant risk category, the most dominant time of day, and by clicking here you can see the observations that created this data. Below is another Pareto chart, highlighting the risk category breakdown of the observations. Each risk category can be analyzed to determine the impact of that risk on the overall safety performance of the operation. Over to the right are two icons that allow you to analyze the details of the risk category and see the observations that created this data. First, by clicking on this icon, you will see the specific risk category and how it is distributed across the units and zones. By clicking this button, you will be returned to the previous information. Next, this icon will allow you to review the individual observations on the observation screen that created this data. At the top of the screen, the multicolored torus shape contains the overall risk score for the operation. By hovering over the various colors, you can see the number of observations for that score, and its percentage of the total score. The chart here shows the time distribution of the observations for each hour of the day. This insight provides helpful analysis to narrow down when our risks are occurring during the operating day. Last, we have this bar chart. This chart can be viewed in several ways. By clicking this selection, you will be presented with several options. The data will be updated based on the option you choose. Now that we have reviewed some of the analytics available to us in the dashboard, let's take a few minutes to look at how we can gain even greater insights by exporting the data from TPulse for more thorough analysis. Clicking on the Observations tab will present all observations in chronological order, starting from the most recent observation. Once on this page, you can filter the data that is of interest for your evaluation and analysis. Via the filtering feature, you can view the data any way that meets your criteria. Once you have the filters selected, click on Apply, and the filtered data will be presented. Now that you've set up your data, you can export it for further analysis. And by the way, your filters will determine the data that gets exported. Once you select Export, you will be asked where you want to save the file. Navigate to the file location and select Save. Now that you have exported your data, let's take a look at some potential insights. Open the file in either Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets to view its contents. Included in the date are several columns, starting with Unit, Zone, Category, Observation ID, Image, Date, Time, Observation, Recommendation, Remarks, Status, and Risk Rating. From this data, you can create a variety of charts and graphs to gain insightful analysis for your safety performance. Let's take a look at several examples. In this example, we can visualize a trend line for the daily observations. Trend lines can be presented in a variety of ways. There is the linear, as we are showing. There is also exponential, polynomial, moving average, and so forth. Another very telling analysis is the evaluation of the times of day that risks are occurring. This is often overlooked, but can reveal some very insightful trends. For example, based on this data, focusing on the behaviors right after lunch would significantly impact the safety performance for this operation. Being able to narrow our focus to the areas that are the most problematic will significantly enhance our ability to make the necessary improvements to make the operation safer. Focusing on 2 of the 5 areas in this example impacts over 50% of the risks. In addition to trends, times, and areas, another risk consideration is behaviors. Knowing the specific behaviors that are causing the risks is tremendously beneficial. In this example, there is both the risk category, such as lifting and hoisting, vehicle safety, etc., and the particular behavior within the risk category. Armed with this information, safety stakeholders can focus their efforts to have more immediate impact on achieving the ultimate goal of Goal Zero. Thank you for taking a few minutes to review the powerful analytics capabilities of the TPulse platform.